Pablo Escobar, aka the King of Cocaine, was one of the wealthiest criminals ever. We're talking back in 1993 when he died, he had a net worth of an estimated 30 billion US dollars. In today's money, it translates to about 64 billion US dollars. And they say crime doesn't pay. As you can imagine, the drug lord and narco-terrorist lived a life so incredibly lavish, it's hard to find a moment in which he was being real. He had things in his possession that many collectors and rich folks today would fight tooth and nail over. Things like a Porsche 356, a Mercedes S600 Pullman, a 1930s Cadillac, and of course mansions to boot, some of which had 300 bedrooms. Born in 1949, Pablo Escobar was the founder and leader of the infamous Medellin cartel. He was widely known as the King of Cocaine, and he was the wealthiest criminal in history. He came from quite humble beginnings and even briefly studied at Universidad Autónoma Latinoamericana of Medellin. However, he dropped out and started to take part in criminal activities. At first, he sold illegal cigarettes and fake lottery tickets. Later, he started stealing cars, and eventually in the 70s, he progressed to drug smuggling, often kidnapping and holding people for ransom. In 1976, Escobar founded the Medellin cartel, which distributed powder cocaine and established the first smuggling routes into the United States. His successful infiltration into the US created an exponential demand for cocaine, and by the 80s, it was estimated Escobar led monthly shipments of 70 to 80 tons of cocaine into the country. He did many bad things, but clearly he was very good at what he did. No wonder Netflix gave him his own series. With his profits, he bought, built, and lived in some of the craziest mansions you've ever seen. We're talking mansions with a zoo and its own airport. In 1991, Escobar surrendered to the authorities and was sentenced to 5 years imprisonment on a host of charges. Yes, all he got was 5 short years. However, being who he was, he struck a deal of no extradition with the then Colombian president, Cesar Gaviria, with the ability to be housed in his own self-built prison, La Catedral. Yes, the man even had his own prison. And obviously, it was no ordinary prison. Let's just say it doubled up as a wedding venue while housing Escobar. We'll tell you more a little later. In 1992, Escobar escaped and went into hiding when authorities attempted to move him to a more standard holding facility, leading to a nationwide manhunt. As a result, the Medellin cartel crumbled, and in 1993, Escobar was killed in his hometown by Colombian National Police a day after his 44th birthday. While living as the world's richest criminal, Escobar amassed a known 141 properties. Let's take a look inside a few of these ridiculous mansions. Perhaps the most famous, or infamous, of his mansions is the one known as Hacienda Nápoles in Puerto Triunfo, Colombia. It consisted of a Spanish colonial house, a zoo, a kart racing track, and get this, an airport. It covered an unthinkable 7.7 square miles. Just to put that in a bit of perspective, 7.7 square miles is bigger than Disneyland in Paris. It has since been turned into a theme park. Take our money, please. We're ready to go there now. Seeing that he had a zoo at the property, it's quite clear that he loved all things exotic. Initially, he had animals such as flamingos, giraffes, zebras, hippos, and even kangaroos. Of those animals, only the hippos are left today, though the herd has grown in size from only 4 to about 20. Another of his more well-known mansions was one called House Guatape, La Manuela, the party mansion. While coke-filled, gun-blasting parties aren't exactly our scene, it must have been something to see. Today, not much of it is left unfortunately, but for those adventurous enough, you can visit the site covered in vegetation and explore as far as you dare. It took 5 years to construct and become Escobar's vacation/party home. In 1993, the year of his death, a rival cartel planted several explosives inside, and well, ripped it to shreds. In its glory days, House Guatape covered 20 acres. The stately mansion had a beautiful pool, tennis courts, and a soccer field, which was also used as a helipad, stables, a guest house, a seaplane dock, a special driveway for motorcycles, trees imported from around the world, and a security force of 120 men. The main house was of course jaw-droppingly luxurious, but since he was who he was, he had to be practical as well. The mansion was built with double-layered walls used for hiding mountains of cash and, of course, cocaine. Another of his over-the-top mansions is located on the Gulf of Mexico in Tulum. But before we tell you more, remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons. In 2012, it was bought by a well-known New York art collector and gallery owner, Leo Malka. Much like the investors who saw potential in the Versace mansion, Malka turned this luxurious home into a boutique hotel and named it Casa Malka. The home he built in Miami, right along the waterfront of Biscayne Bay, led to some serious excitement when the property's new owner demolished it in 2016. It's a known fact, and as we mentioned it earlier, but Escobar used to hide cash and cocaine in the walls of his homes. So when the new owner of this Miami home started clearing the place, 2 metal safes were found. Legend has it, it has never been opened. Apparently it was seized by authorities and still sits in a bank vault. Well, we find that very hard to believe. The Miami mansion was quite modest compared to his other homes. It covered 6,500 square feet and only had 4 bedrooms. Over in the Caribbean, however, no expense was spared on his large Isla Grande mansion. He built it to be a massive oasis fit for entertainment and luxury. It might be a half-demolished, forgotten-about property now, but back in the day, it was phenomenal. Apart from the giant main complex, the property featured waterfront apartments, a palm court centered around an enormous swimming pool, a helicopter landing pad, and more than 300 rooms for guests and partygoers. Not to mention the gold shower heads in the bathrooms. Some say it resembled a strip of Miami's South Beach in its 1980s heyday. Before we explore the rest of the spending habits, we just wanted to tell you more about this prison. Come to think of it, it was pretty much another one of his mansions. As mentioned earlier, after his capture, Escobar negotiated to build his own prison where he could serve out his sentence. But it was no ordinary prison. For starters, the Colombian police weren't allowed within 12 miles of La Catedral, aka the Cathedral. Inside, it had a gym, a billiards room, a bar, a sauna and jacuzzi, a waterfall, and more than a few big screen TVs. Oh, it also had a disco in which Escobar hosted wedding receptions, because that's what's missing in every other prison. You have to give it to him, he was a legend in his own right. While he clearly loved having a luxury mansion or two to throw the wildest parties imaginable in, his spending didn't exactly stop there. The man also had a soft spot for cars, such as his Mercedes-Benz 600, a true classic. It was produced between 1963 and 1981 and featured a front-mounted 6.3-liter V8 engine. They had a top speed of 155 miles per hour and can go from 0 to 60 in just 4.6 seconds, and will fetch as much as $3 million today. Escobar also owned a 1972 Mercedes Pullman. This is basically a longer version of the 600. There were only 304 of these ever built, with several featuring a convertible top over the rear passenger compartment. The ones owned by Escobar were so famous that when it was sadly destroyed in an accident, he chose to keep the wreckage around just to show off. Then there was a Porsche 356, one of the earlier models from the car maker, and his absolutely breathtaking 1930s Cadillac. It is widely believed that he bought this classic car so that he could look like the famous mobster Al Capone. Only 4,076 were ever built, so we'd love to know just how much it would have been worth today, having been owned by Pablo Escobar especially. It's thought that back then he would probably have paid close to $100,000 for it. He also had quite the collection of planes, such as a few military aircrafts, 6 helicopters, and 15 private jets. We're sure they all came in pretty handy on more than one occasion.